What's up, guys? We're back with more Geek Space content, and today I wanted to jump back into the wizarding world and take some time after I looked at all the Harry Potter books to examine the Harry Potter characters. So today I'm going to go ahead and give you my ranking of the top 20 Harry Potter characters from my least favorite to my favorite. Let's do this. Before I go ahead and get into today's video, I just want to remind everybody that this is just my opinion. It's not the right opinion by any means. So feel free to give me your opinions on the ranking of these Harry Potter characters in the comments down below. And if you're not feeling up to giving me all 20 characters, maybe just who are a few of your favorites. With that out of the way, let's jump right in. Kicking it off in 20th place, we have Severus Snape. And Snape's an interesting character because I know a lot of people love him for how he risked everything to protect Harry, which he certainly did, and how he unconditionally loved Lily Potter, which is certainly true.
Always.
But also, I just don't like the way this character takes out a lot of his anger and frustration for what James Potter did to him when he was younger, and kind of takes that out on Harry. He's a very abusive teacher, physically abusive towards his students.
Look, we've just got to grit our teeth and do it. Tonight when we get back to the common room, we'll both have partners. Agreed?
Agreed.
Oh!
He's not a very good teacher, in my opinion. Certainly knows what he's talking about, but he doesn't seem to have the care for students that I would want from a teacher. I definitely would not want to be taught by Snape. And while it is admirable how he was willing to turn on Voldemort and risk his own life to ensure that Voldemort would be defeated, and how he risked everything to kind of protect Harry and keep him safe, still, I just find the way he treats Harry and the other students at Hogwarts pretty unacceptable, and so he's gonna have to be at the bottom of this list.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Next up, in 19th place, we've got Cedric Diggory. And Cedric's an interesting character because he's really the first major death we get to experience in the Harry Potter series. And he's a likable character. He's kind, loyal, a good friend, nice, helpful guy. I really enjoyed his character. I enjoyed the way he was portrayed in the movies, the way he was written in the books. I enjoyed pretty much everything about the character. The only thing that held him back a bit for me, I will say, is that I don't quite understand why he couldn't be more direct when he gave Harry the heads up about the second clue. Couldn't just tell him to listen to the egg underwater. I mean, it was a good hint, but I feel like after Harry gave him all that heads up about the dragons in the first task, he could have just been a little bit more direct and helpful in that matter.
The prefect's bathroom on the 5th floor. It's not a bad place for a bath. Just take your egg and mull things over in the hot water.
But next up, in 18th place, we've got Oliver Wood.
Could I borrow Wood for a moment, please?
And Wood is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated characters of the entire Harry Potter franchise. He's just such a likable character because he's so thoroughly obsessed with Quidditch.
I spent the summer devising a whole new Quidditch program. We are going to train earlier, harder, and longer.
I can't even recall a scene where I remember reading about Oliver Wood and it not having something to do with Quidditch. He was just so determined, so thoroughly invested in Quidditch, and just kind of, we got to see the fascination with the world of Quidditch a bit through his eyes. And he was also a very good, loyal friend to Harry, good guy to have on your side. He did come back to Hogwarts and fight in the Battle of Hogwarts against Voldemort. So definitely good points there. And just really a likable character who kind of captured my heart, I guess. But next up, in 17th place, we've got Bellatrix Lestrange.
Down, Bella, we mustn't touch what isn't ours.
And Bellatrix just, there's something about the way she's written and portrayed that makes her so thoroughly enjoyable, because she so thoroughly, in an almost over-the-top way, is energetic and enjoys doing all these bad things. She never does anything halfway, is so enthusiastic and over the top and unnecessarily flamboyant in all of her actions and villainous deeds, and just is such a terrible, cruel character, but does it with such gusto and such energy that it's exciting to watch on screen or read about in the books, just because there's so much energy and enthusiasm brought to the character. But next up, in 16th place, we have Rubeus Hagrid.
Stand aside, Hagrid.
No!
And Hagrid is one of the most lovable characters in the entire series. He's not the sharpest tool in the toolbox, but he has a genuine love for all kinds of creatures and people. He's a great, loyal friend to Harry and the others throughout the entire series. And he's just a really enjoyable character because he's just kind of that affable, dim-witted, goofy kind of character who continually is trying to do the right thing and do things properly, but just because of his kind of dim-wittedness and the way he looks at creatures that other people would view as dangerous and views them as seriously misunderstood creatures.
Seriously misunderstood creatures spiders are.
Because of all that, he often kind of messes up in his attempts to do the right thing. And there's just something enjoyable about seeing that they don't take him over the top. He's not a caricature or a cartoon. He's not just there for laughs. He does have importance within the story. He's a very important character within the series. But I just enjoy the kind of lightheartedness he manages to bring to what can otherwise be some very serious and downcast books.
I shouldn't have told you that. I should not have told you that.
But next up in 15th place is Molly Weasley. And Mrs. Weasley is just really a great character, kind of because of the way you can see how much she loves and is concerned for and works to protect her children, and kind of the way she just becomes the mother that Harry never had. Once he encounters the Weasleys, his life is changed drastically, and a lot of that's due to the way Mrs. Weasley is continually taking care of him and making sure he gets little things like Christmas presents and making sure he always enjoys his meals and enjoys whatever time he's spending with the Weasley family. And even though most of the time she's just like a soft, lovable teddy bear, she does have, as we've seen, a very vicious side when it comes to protecting her children and the people she loves.
Not my daughter.
And it's just enjoyable to see that kind of ferocity come out within her. So Mrs. Weasley is just a really enjoyable character all around. Next up, in 14th place, I've got Nymphadora Tonks.
Don't call me Nymphadora.
And Tonks is an interesting character because she starts off as a really comedic character. She's always tripping and bumping into things, and because of her ability to shapeshift, is always making funny faces or like turning her nose into a pig snout, all that kind of stuff.
It seems that your hearing at the ministry is to be before the entire Wizengamot.
I don't understand.
But there's also a seriousness to the character, especially in the Half-Blood Prince, where she's kind of having those romantic issues with Lupin, and that's really affecting her whole attitude and personality. But just a very interesting character, always a delight to read whatever chapter she's in or watch whatever scene she's in. Just never a disappointment, so I put her higher up on the list. But next up, in 13th place, we've got Lord Voldemort. And this is an interesting character because, I mean, obviously he's the main villain of the series, but also I just find his backstory so interesting. His backstory scenes are some of my favorite parts of the Half-Blood Prince book. I was really disappointed that they left a lot of that out of the movies, but just his backstory and the intrigue and the interest it provides, and how you so genuinely want to see him taken down, and how he keeps popping up throughout the series in all these unexpected ways, and how all those different little appearances kind of draw together at the conclusion. Like something you'd think was insignificant, like the diary being destroyed, obviously was very significant for Harry and the other characters, but you would think it wouldn't have much importance to present day Lord Voldemort. But then later we find out that the diary was a Horcrux, and that it was actually inherently crucial to Voldemort's plans to achieve kind of eternal life. And really, it's just so interesting to see how he keeps trying to achieve his goals, but everything keeps backfiring on him. He went to go kill Harry because he thought that would ensure his rise to power, and instead he wound up losing his powers and casting a protection spell over Harry. He made all these Horcruxes in an attempt to elongate his life, but then his sentimentality and the way he kept hiding them in places that were important to him and only using important artifacts, that led to them being destroyed. And then all his evil acts in an attempt to gain power and gain eternal life, and ultimately he wound up only living into his 70s. So not only did he die young for a wizard, he also died young for a muggle.
Justice.
So it was just really interesting to see kind of his backstory and the way he so desperately goes after eternal life and winds up coming short every time. Just provides for a really enjoyable and interesting character. But next up, in 12th place, we've got Albus Dumbledore.
Albus Percival Wulfric
Brian Dumbledore.
And Dumbledore was interesting for me because he is an enjoyable character. You certainly enjoy the sense of merriment he brings to some of the heavier moments in the series.
Earwax.
And then just the way he's so continually protective of Harry. But what I really don't like about this character is how downright manipulative he can be. For example, when he wouldn't talk to Harry during the Order of the Phoenix book because he believed it would prevent things from happening that wound up happening. Sirius Black wound up dying because he didn't communicate properly with Harry. And there's just so many times he left Harry in the dark or manipulated situations to ensure that they would go in a way that they didn't have to. I mean, even him holding back from Harry the whole time, the fact that Harry was a Horcrux, that he had a piece of Voldemort in him and would have to die in order to defeat Voldemort.
Yes. He must die.
Even keeping that from Harry throughout the entire series. If Snape hadn't given Harry his memories, then Harry may very well have never known that he needed to sacrifice himself. So just because Dumbledore keeps trying to manipulate situations and yet his manipulations keep failing and leaving things either the same as or worse off than they were in the beginning, just because he never seems to be able to produce the right results from his efforts. He was kept back out of my top 10. But next up, in 11th place, we've got Draco Malfoy.
Oh, my father will hear about this!
And Draco's really an interesting character because he's an antagonist throughout pretty much the entire series. And for the first few books, he's just a bully. That's pretty much all there is to him. You don't get much more insight into the character. But then we get to the Half-Blood Prince, and we really get to understand the pressures he's feeling from his parents, the kind of loneliness he's enduring, the sheer terror he's experiencing at the task he's been given, at the task of trying to kill Dumbledore. That
I have to kill you. He's gonna kill me.
He's ultimately not able to do. He just can't bring himself to do it. And just realizing that he was forced to become a Death Eater at such a young age and was caught up in all of this when he was really being pressured into it instead of wanting to be involved in all of it. And just seeing how much of his worldview and the way he turned out was shaped by his parents and not necessarily by his own choice. It just provides for a really interesting and sympathetic character. I am really disappointed they left out in Deathly Hallows Part 2 the intended scene where Draco would have thrown his wand to Harry. I think that would have provided the ultimate kind of finish off to his character's arc in the journey of a bit of redemption they'd been trying to bring him on. But even without that scene being included in the movie, I still ultimately think in both the books and the movie, he is a really interesting and sympathetic character. Next up, in 10th place, we've got Luna Lovegood.
You're just as sane as I am.
And Luna is just so quirky and weird and interesting. It's easy to kind of take her for granted. But she has some of the wisest and most insightful quotes throughout the entire series.
Well, if I were you-know-who, I'd want you to feel cut off from everyone else. Because if it's just you alone, you're not as much of a threat.
And she just is such a steadfast friend to Harry and provides him with such emotional support and just such a good friendship. She seems to have a good relationship with pretty much all of the main characters within the series. And it's kind of interesting. I remember seeing a clip of the scene from the Deathly Hallows Part 2 where she is just like, Harry, you have to listen to me now. And it's interesting to see kind of she's this character that's really taken for granted as just quirky and weird and kind of off. But when she really stands up for herself and points out that she has things to say that are absolutely instrumental in defeating Voldemort, really it's just interesting to see her character kind of stand up for herself and reach beyond the kind of veil of weirdness and quirkiness that has been keeping people from seeing the really insightful person within.
You listen to me right now!
But next up in 9th place, we've got Sirius Black.
I did my waiting! 12 years of it! In Azkaban!
And man, he had a really tough life. Perhaps one of the worst lives within the Harry Potter series, because he grew up in a pureblood family where he was very pressured to be basically Slytherin. All of his family previously had been Slytherins. He was the first of the Black family to be sorted into the Gryffindor house, and he was really pressured to just be basically a Death Eater, basically turn out like another Lucius Malfoy. And he wound up running away from home at 16 to escape all those pressures. And he was part of the Marauders alongside James Potter, Peter Pettigrew, and Remus Lupin. And he was just a great, loyal friend. But then Peter Pettigrew betrayed the Potters. And then he betrayed Sirius and wound up getting Sirius blamed for his crimes. So Sirius was then sentenced to Azkaban for life and wound up serving 12 years of that sentence before he escaped. And he comes to kill Peter Pettigrew, but Pettigrew escapes and Sirius winds up having to go on the run for years, and he feels kind of aimless and helpless because he can't be a public presence in the fight against Voldemort because he's still considered guilty to the public. And then he risks everything. He risks exposure, he risks death to go save Harry and his friends in the battle at the Department of Mysteries. And ultimately, he does wind up paying with his life for taking that risk. And he's just such an interesting character. Really sad to see him go. It's important that he does go for what it does for Harry's character journey. But man, really sad to see him die in that way. And just, he was such a great godfather to Harry. Just, they had a great friendship and bond there. And kind of the way Sirius sees Harry as James all over again.
Nice one, James.
Nice one, James!
And Harry sees Sirius as kind of like the only family he has. We won't count the Dursleys for obvious reasons. But just that relationship and the bond that Harry and Sirius have just really makes for a great character. But next up in 8th place, we've got Professor McGonagall.
It's good to see you.
And really, I think Professor McGonagall is kind of underrated as far as Hogwarts teachers go. People tend to be much more vocal about their appreciation of Dumbledore or Snape, but really, I mean, Dumbledore wound up manipulating Harry and offering up as bait a number of times, and Snape was just downright abusive to the boy. But McGonagall was always supportive of Harry, a strict but fair teacher, always a great teacher to all students, didn't show a whole lot of favoritism, a strong sense of what is right, a very fiery spirit, not afraid to stand up against characters like Dolores Umbridge when most people were afraid to disagree with Umbridge or do anything against her because she had the Ministry backing her. McGonagall was continually trying to subvert her and make sure the right things happen.
There are several things I would like to say.
And just, I really enjoyed McGonagall as a character. She had some really great lines in the movies that are fun to see.
I've always wanted to use that spell.
But just a really great character and a really loyal and steadfast supporter of Harry. Next up, in 7th place, we've got Ron Weasley. And Ron's a great character because of his loyalty to his friends. Throughout the series, we see him disagree with Hermione multiple times. We see him and Harry to the point of not speaking with each other. We see him having a lot of struggles with his friends. But despite it all, he keeps coming back. He keeps coming back to protect his friends. Really memorable is the part in the books where he's in the Shrieking Shack with a broken leg, and him and Harry and Hermione are there. And Sirius Black is there, and at this point, they're still under the impression that Sirius is there to kill Harry. So Ron is getting up on his broken leg, and he's like pale and quivering, but he's still holding up his wand and saying, if you want to kill Harry, you'll have to kill us too. And it's just really great to see his character is so unendingly loyal, so continually steadfast and faithful to his friends that he just makes for a great character and a great friend. I want a friend like Ron. But next up in 6th place, we've got Neville Longbottom.
Neville Longbottom.
And Neville is just a really great character because of the way he transforms throughout the series. You know, we kind of always have Ron as a loyal character. Hermione's always intelligent and clever and quick-witted. Harry's always been brave and ready to stand up against anybody. But at first, Neville was just the goofball. He was the comedic relief. He was the kid who was always messing up, always doing something wrong, could never seem to get anything right.
Why is it always me?
But then you learn more of his backstory and how his parents were tortured into insanity by Bellatrix Lestrange and some other Death Eaters. And you see him kind of start to, particularly in the Order of the Phoenix book, be willing to take up more of a leadership role and be willing to kind of be braver and become and fight back against oppression and bullies and cruelty and injustice.
Neville Longbottom, is it? How's Mum and Dad?
Better now they're about to be avenged.
And just he kind of, by the end of the series, he's almost unrecognizable as the same Neville Longbottom from the very first book because he's so brave, because he's so willing to stand up and face enemies, face injustice, and put his life on the line.
It's not over!
He has some really big acts. He kills Nagini, Voldemort's snake, and the last Horcrux, so he's absolutely crucial in Voldemort's final defeat. But just, honestly, I think Neville might have one of the best character arcs within the whole series, just because of the way he transforms from a shy, timid goofball to a brave leader. All right, before I go ahead and give you my top 5 picks for my favorite Harry Potter characters, do remember to give me your ranking in the comments down below. I really would appreciate a nice, positive discussion down there. And if you like this video, be sure to like and hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notifications for more Geek Space content.
What are you waiting for?
We'd really appreciate it. It does help what we're trying to do here. And with that out of the way, let's jump right in with, in 5th place, George Weasley.
You okay, Freddie?
And the Weasley twins, spoiler alert, have Fred in 4th place.
Spoiler alert.
But the Weasley twins are just such enjoyable presences throughout the whole series because they're pranksters. They've got a mischievous side. They're always trying to make a joke or do something funny. But once you get past that mischief and all that pranking and joking around, you find 2 brilliant, brave young men. And they're so smart. I certainly wouldn't be able to make half of the joke products that they're able to figure out how to make. And they were able to make a very successful business without even having to finish school because they knew what they were good at. And they spent the time, they put in the effort to figure out how to execute it and how to do it properly, and became very successful. And then they're just such loyal, steadfast friends. You see, even though they may sometimes joke with their siblings, especially Ron.
5 galleons.
How much for me?
5 galleons.
I'm your brother.
10 galleons.
They really do care for their siblings, and they really do care for Harry. And when it comes down to it, they're always willing to make a sacrifice, put their lives, their health, their safety on the line. George lost his ear just trying to defend Harry.
I'm holy, Fred. You get it?
And they're just always willing to stand by and fight for what is right. But you can always count on them to provide some sort of levity or humor while doing it. So they just make for really enjoyable characters. And of course, like I said, in 4th place is Fred Weasley.
The whole wide world of ear-related humour, and you go for I'm holy.
And the only reason, absolutely only reason he's higher than George is because he wound up making the ultimate sacrifice in the Battle of Hogwarts. They're really kind of inseparable. You can't have one Weasley twin without the other. But just Fred was willing to make that ultimate sacrifice, and he ultimately did wind up making that sacrifice. So just two amazing characters, two great friends, and two funny pranksters. But next up in third place, we've got Ginny Weasley.
Ginny, these must be for you.
Not only that, it's ghastly.
And Ginny's interesting because she starts off as the ultimate Harry Potter fangirl, just kind of obsessed with him and how famous he is, and got this continual crush on him. But as the series progresses, she becomes really a fiery and bold character. Just you really enjoy getting to see her stand up to people and be brave and
Leave him alone.
continually be outgoing and energetic and determined and very fierce. And I'm not the greatest fan of the way she was portrayed in the movies. I think they could have done a lot better with the character, but I still appreciated the movie's portrayal, and in the books, just absolutely, Ginny is an amazing character who I always enjoyed reading. And in second place, we've got Hermione Granger.
Always a total surprise.
And Hermione was a really great character. She started off as kind of snooty and stuck up and a real bookworm who was always convinced she was right and cared more about grades than anything else.
Oh, are you doing magic? Let's see then.
But just, she evolves over the course of the series. She still keeps her intelligence, her quick-wittedness. She's absolutely crucial to Harry's journey, helps him figure things out every step of the way, but just evolves to become so much more of an emotionally invested character. Really learns to care about other people and see the emotional side of things and recognize there's more beyond the black and white of following the rules and disobeying the rules. Really gets a better grasp on morality and how sometimes you have to break the rules in order to do what's right.
I mean, it's sort of exciting, isn't it? Breaking the rules.
And just provides such a great character journey and just is such a continually supportive and loyal character throughout the whole series. Even more so, I'd say, than Ron. She never seems to have as many disagreements with Harry. She's just a bit more of an agreeable character than Ron is. So she's just an amazing character who continually sticks by her friends and is just always surprising everybody with the amounts of knowledge she has. But in no surprise, in first place, we've got Buckbeak. The great, loyal, and brave hippogriff who's willing to... No. All right, I'm just kidding. In first place, we have Harry Potter. Harry Potter. The main character of the series and a character who is absolutely always willing to make whatever sacrifices necessary to protect his friends and do what's right. Perhaps one of the most selfless characters in the series, and a character with perhaps the most innate sense of right and wrong. I don't really think, aside from his struggles with the Half-Blood Prince's book in The Half-Blood Prince, we don't really see him have a whole lot of struggles with doing what's right or doing what's wrong. He never seems to be as petty as some other characters, like Hermione using the Confundus charm to help make sure Ron got his position on the Quidditch team, or perhaps Ron being kind of a jerk in various situations. We never really seem to have as much of a problem with Harry. He's gone through horrific things, but despite it all, he maintains a steadfast devotion to protecting his friends and defeating Voldemort. And ultimately, he's willing to and nearly does make the ultimate sacrifice to do what's right and defeat Voldemort. And just, he's an amazing character who's written great, portrayed great, always a great character, and just a really steadfast and good person. So that's it. That's my ranking of my top 20 Harry Potter characters. If you think there's a character that I should have included that I didn't, or that I shouldn't have included that I did, make sure to let me know in the comments down below. And let me know what you want to see from me next on Geek Space. If you'd like to see me stick with Harry Potter or move on to another fandom. And I'll see you in the next video. Adios.